Thank you for joining us. I'm Winston Parrish. I'm here with my grandfather, Dr. Ralph Sexton. We thank you for joining us for part 3 of Israel at War. This is the 18th day of the war, of the conflict that Israel is fighting now in multiple facets and multiple ways. And we are honored to be together at the table again, talking about this conflict with a biblical perspective, a biblical worldview. Two people who love Israel, who have been to Israel multiple times and Granddad, you've spent over 2 years of your life there, and I've had the privilege of traveling 13 times in the country, and our hearts are still heavy for our friends, and we're taking in a lot of information and processing everything as it comes in, talking to people who are in Israel. Even last night we talked to some folks that have a firsthand perspective of everything that's happening on the ground. Yeah. And so today we're coming together from a different setting, a different venue. We're working together at the house, and thankful to be here together, and thankful for your insight. It's been a lot of study and time and less sleep as of late.
Boy, it has been, and thank you, Pastor Winston, for your dedication, your determination, and I think we ought to take a moment to thank Andrew Weinbarger, who is not on camera, but his heart's with us through this whole journey, and he has labored long hours to make sure that we get to God's people the latest information. And his gift is to make sure some things we say get illustrated.
Yes, sir.
That they can see it.
And Heather Everett in the studio editing.
She's down there in Greensboro, North Carolina. Terry Inman helping with all the graphics. And it's a team effort. And we are just so grateful to these media people. Their job has just really skyrocketed in importance since this war broke out. And I was listening to one report just right before we went on, and they're on another day. They were talking about they were approaching day 20 over in the Holy Land, and they were talking about why has not the troops gone in to Gaza? What's holding that back? So one of the things we want to do for all of our friends that's watching, we're hearing from a lot of churches, a lot of preachers, a lot of ministries, a lot of Bible teachers, and we're hearing from you asking questions. And so as they come in, we're trying to answer them, and we're trying to get that information back to you. And they were saying that in the live speech that Netanyahu just did, he was saying to the people that he was giving the Americans time to put air defense forces around all of our bases and to protect our supercarrier, the Gerald Ford, and the Eisenhower, that both of those carriers are there. So it sounds to me like, Pastor Winston, that they're expecting this to get worse before it gets better.
So someone that's there in Israel, I've got his quote, and he's talking about this update about why Israel has not gone into Gaza in full scale yet. Right. We know there's over 350,000 reservists that have been called up and who are waiting on the border of Gaza.
Right.
This is Thursday, and last night it looks like a tank division did cross into Gaza and did some operations. There was multiple Hamas operatives killed. I think the way the Israelis put it was a cell of operatives that were killed. And so I think that is beginning to happen slower than maybe this mass invasion all in once, probing the land as we were talking about.
I think as a military probe, and they were leading it with that big new super armored bulldozer. I think it's almost 30 feet long, that one vehicle.
But this is from Yonatan Tuval, and he says this. He says this is an update.
Okay.
That a U.S. official confirms to me that the key reason for the IDF ground invasion delay is the United States' request to complete preps for broader conflict. Preps include deployment of THAAD and Patriot air defense systems in the Gulf. He puts in this possibly also Jordan and northern Iraq, and the arrival of the USS Ike plus 2,000 more Marines in the region. So it's obvious that Israel is getting pressure from the United States, the European Union, to allow them time to prepare for a broader conflict and protect its assets in the region. Andrew and I were talking the other day, we forget that there is a NATO air base operating every day in Syria. We forget that.
It's there.
And so they've already received fire. I can't remember if that particular base in Syria, if it was missiles or drones, but nonetheless, they came under attack. So it already is, in the sense, a broader conflict, and the next few weeks could be telling about what our world's going to look like the next 10 years.
I think that observation from our friend there in Israel is so important, because two things are happening at the same time. The U.S. pressure is saying, let us move our defense equipment around, let us get ready in case this thing really goes to the next level, is that Qatar has sort of been ambiguous. Are they on the side of terrorism? Well, they've financed it in the past. Or are they on the side of peace and getting the hostages? So they said this morning to the Israelis, if you won't go in, we'll get all of the hostages back. Well, that's a big statement. But I think that the quandary that Israel's in, how do they not go in if they have the hostages or don't have the hostages, over the unbelievable brutality and violence that we saw Hamas perform?
I heard one commentator who works within the Israeli government, he was being interviewed, and he said, I think it's time for us to begin to consider, and at this point it had just been 2 weeks, that 2 weeks into this conflict, just a few of those hostages have been released. I think it's up to 4 now that have been released. But he said, we need to take that number, and really whatever that number may be. There are different estimations. Hamas said yesterday, we actually don't know how many we actually have. We know that now Islamic Jihad has over 30 of their own hostages. So that number,
from Hamas.
right, a different organization operating in Gaza. So I think it's important that we listen to what this man said, this statement. It was powerful. He said, I think it might be time for us to consider however many hostages there are in tunnels in Gaza, that those hostages are a part of the death count and death toll from October the 7th. He said, we may never see those people again. And that's a heartbreaking reality to even have that mentality creep in. And I think that it speaks to the brutality of Hamas, untelling what's happening to those hostages. And I know there's a lot of propaganda from countries like Qatar, the foreign minister of Iran, who proves each and every day that he is an evil, wicked, vile man, that these hostages are somehow getting animal crackers and juice and snack time, and he's painting some unrealistic picture of what it means to be a hostage. It's just not so.
Right.
And I want to ask you about this. This was something that came from an unnamed source within the White House. But the White House has ordered the Department of Defense to begin preparing contingency plans for a worst-case scenario in the Middle East, which could require the evacuation of hundreds of thousands of U.S. nationals from the region, with significant concern for the roughly 600,000 Americans in Lebanon and Israel. This was from OSNet Defender. So just give me your brief. You've been in the region since the 70s. Give me an idea of what that looks like.
Post 6 Day War, I was there post the War of 70, and it changes the ground environment. Do you remember we were in certain places in Turkey, and you told me I just don't feel safe?
Right.
Well, how do you describe that? There's a tension in the land, and so now what's happening with this broad brush of political maneuvering, they're able to paint all Americans in one color or one corner, and then they're able to paint all Jews and then paint all Arabs and all Palestinians. And so it doesn't matter if you're a moderate Muslim and you're as upset as anybody at Hamas did, or that you are a Bedouin or a Druze, you know. And so I think what America is starting to wake up to is that we may have played Mr. Nice Guy too long, and by that, since President Biden went in office, I think our troops in Syria and Iraq, our air bases have either been drone attacked or mortar attack or rocket attack 90 times in those years he's been in, and we've only responded twice. And so you're giving off the essence of weakness. You can do anything you want to do, so you're not going to come back after us. And then you add to that what Russia did this morning early in Moscow. They said, well, we'll bring Hamas to Moscow, and we'll put them at the table. Well, that's giving them credibility. You're not going to negotiate with them. Their charter says Jews die. Israel is eradicated. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. So that means there's no Holy Land.
And even in I guess this was yesterday or Tuesday, George Washington University, a group of students decided that they would have a not pro-Palestinian, but a pro-Hamas demonstration, and bring a projector at dusk and project on the side of one of the buildings there at George Washington University, "Glory to our martyrs," something that is said in Arabic in Gaza when news of a Hamas militant is killed. Right. Glory to our martyrs. I am a proponent, and I believe in free speech.
Sure.
I will always be a proponent for free speech. Right. I think it's what makes America great.
Makes us great.
But just because you can say it doesn't mean you should say it. And I'm thankful, though, on the other hand, I'm thankful that sentiment and that heart is being exposed.
Right.
It is a free country. You can say what you want to, project on the side of the building. You're free to do so. There are other countries not too far away where if you did that, you'd never be seen again. Enjoy that privilege that you have.
They use the word "you disappear."
Right, you disappear. But it is a benefit to us if we're paying attention and if we're willing to learn the lesson that smoldering hatred for Jews, this is not about anything other than Judaism, Jews, their land, their right, and to say that Zionism and Israel are separate issues and they should be separate things, and that's a very, very ignorant statement.
Yeah.
Israel is Zionism. It's
you can't separate them.
You can't separate the two. No. It's the same thing. So it's heartbreaking to see that in our young people. But I think if we'll allow it to be, it's a wake-up call for every pastor, for every youth pastor, for every person that volunteers in a youth group at church, that the minds of our young people are being infiltrated. They are being bombarded with lie, with violence, and it's because of what's in our hands and what's on our iPads. It's so easy to spin a narrative.
So how did all of this venomous, toxic, anti-Israel, anti-Jew sentiment, how's it lived underground and cooked and smoldered after we know what happened in 1937, 1938, 39, and the rise of Adolf Hitler and the killing of 6 million Jews?
The Bible talks about the end times, peerless times, and unnatural affection, and there's so many different markers to know that we are in the last days.
Right.
I believe it's one of the greatest markers we've ever had to see just how depraved and how far the general psyche has gone. We're in new territory. It's a dark, dark day. We are dripping as a people. We are dripping with evil.
Well, if you've got a whole nation full of teenagers and young adults that don't go to church, they don't know any Bible stories.
Right.
They don't know about heritage, whether they're a Jewish teenager or whether they're a Christian teenager. They don't know the Torah. They don't know the Bible. They don't know about God created the heavens and the earth, and they don't know that God chose this people group to illustrate grace and mercy to human beings.
Right.
And so now we're back, and Hamas comes in on a Saturday morning at 6:30 on October the 7th. Now we have 1,800 wounded, 600 murdered. And you know what? And they're still finding bodies.
They're still finding bodies.
Where they were running, trying to hide from the terrorists.
I want to talk about Iran again for just a minute, and we keep talking about the foreign minister who and I think people miss this. a lot of his time is spent right here on our soil.
Yeah.
He just yesterday, and I think even today maybe, is in New York City. He's at the United Nations, and yesterday addressed the General Assembly. And he warned the United States, who, in his terms, and I'm paraphrasing what he said, but that the United States is controlling, that we're the puppeteer, Israel is the puppet of the situation in Gaza, and said that Iran doesn't wish for the conflict to broaden, but if that America doesn't stop supporting, helping, and in his words, manipulating and driving the force of Israel in its attacks on Gaza, its airstrikes, that the United States of America would feel that fire. He used that word fire, that we would feel the fire and the wrath of the Ayatollah and the Iranian people for standing with Israel. So it's obvious that this is more than just a physical war. Obviously there is a physical war being fought, but there is a true, palpable spiritual war, and we're seeing the physical manifestation of what's in men's hearts come to fruition. In Iran, people may think, and the reason I'm saying this is because I had a conversation with someone on Monday who said, well, why are we afraid of Iran? They're third world. They don't have military. They don't have weapons. We have created this idea that the United States is above any reach of any foreign military, and that's just not so.
No.
That's just not so. The Iranians have advanced technology. They have fighter jets, and they have very capable tanks, and they have hundreds of thousands of troops.
You cannot ignore their partnership with Russia and North Korea. North Korea is the one that gave the encryption code system to Hamas, that no one in the world knew that Hamas and Iran were talking through this new code system. Russia's given them air defense systems and rockets that are precision guided. So think about Iran. America has made the monster. We let them drop out of the nuclear talks with no accountability. And can you even imagine the White House, after Biden went into office, he said, we've got to share the resources of the Middle East. We've got to share. So let's take the sanctions off Iran. Let them sell their oil.
Doesn't make sense.
Doesn't make sense. $1 billion every 7 days.
Standing there threatening us, literally threaten the American
To
people,
kill you.
the American lifestyle, what we are as a people, threatened us by fire, in his words.
Right.
Meanwhile, we're turning our backs in a way that Iran, you go do what you want to do, and we'll work it out with Qatar and how the money's released. We shouldn't even be having that conversation.
Do you remember Obama landed a plane and it couldn't hardly take off because it was so packed
Full of cash.
full of money? And then Biden just gave Iran $6 billion for a hostage exchange. Then you add to that $1 billion a week that China's paying them for oil. That's over $60 billion in a year. And they can buy the latest equipment, latest technology, and they can finance their fighters. And you got to remember, they're in the Bible. They're Persia. And they are not Arabs. They're Persians. Right. And so they have a religious belief and a conviction that America doesn't understand. We value life. We protect life. We are precious and guard life. And they believe that if they can kill great Satan, United States, little Satan, Israel, that it'll provoke the hidden Iman, and that he will come and he'll speak and he'll destroy America, he'll destroy Israel, and the entire world will be an Islamic caliphate. And the leader of Hamas on Monday quoted something very similar. He said, there'll come a day of no injustice, there'll come a day of no oppression, there'll come a day of no Jews, and there'll come a day of no Christians. And the world, the entire planet, he's used that phrase, will be one under Islam.
It's hard to imagine that this is where we are. And as this foreign minister was speaking in New York at the United Nations, the General Assembly, who comes, as you're talking about China and Russia, who comes to his aid and stands with the international community who is standing against Israel. There's no other way to put that.
No.
But the two main leaders of that caucus that's developed within the United Nations was China and Iran. In July of this year, we shared a powerful photo of the leader of Iran, the Ayatollah, the leader of Turkey, the president there, and Vladimir Putin, standing, the three of them, hand in hand. That was just in July.
Well, let me ask you a question. You brought up Turkey. That's supposed to be a Western country. He's in NATO.
Right.
So why did he go to his parliament and this week on Monday make an address saying that Hamas was within their rights, they were oppressed, and that Israel should be destroyed? And do you know who they just cooperated with, the Turkish Navy? They just ran an operation with the Eisenhower, our aircraft carrier, got our battle plans, how we work. And there's Turkey. And they're telling us in their own parliament, we're not on your side.
Could it be that for the sake of being together in camaraderie and a peace that really is a fantasy, could it be that we've allowed ourselves to be infiltrated by people who to our face are saying we are your friend, but behind our back are more than willing to see our way of life and America as we know it come to an end? Because to be a part of NATO is to share military secrets.
That's
it's
part
to
of
share the patent on firearms. It's to share all types of resources that pertain to
the
military
range
operations.
and capability of missiles.
Yes, sir.
The range and capability of aircraft.
The Institute of War, the Institute for the Study of War, a nonprofit that operates in Washington, D.C., one of their commentators put this out. He said, "A big war is coming. It's at the doorstep of the Middle East. There is no element of surprise this time. The axis of evil knows it's coming. Israel and its Western partners know it's coming. You and I know it's coming. It's going to be bloody, and it's going to be ugly."
Well, that is a research man who lives in the numbers of analyzing machines and political power and armies and their strength, and he's telling you the chessboard is loaded and they're getting ready to move in.
All the pieces are there.
All the pieces are there. And you know what we've forgotten, Winston? You know, this is scary, but we have such a short memory. We're such pleasure-seeking people. The Bible says that we've abandoned the things of God and the ways of God, and we're lovers of self more than lovers of God. You know what we've forgotten after 9/11? The 9/11, those guys that were flying those planes, they were radical jihadists. They're not the Muslim guy that has the coffee shop at the corner and that you talk to every morning with your Jewish bagel and your, that's not the friendship type people. They hate those moderate Arabs.
Right.
They hate the Jews. They
killed
kill them.
They
They
killed
kill
them
them.
October the 7th.
They killed them. And so here's what they did. They did not even tell their wives what they were up to, because part of their radical Islamic doctrine is that if they deceive the infidel, they not only get 70 virgins, but they get another level of reward. In other words, the more lies they tell, the more deception they have, then the greater is their reward in paradise. So they'll look you in the eye and lie to you. How do you sit down at the table and talk to that? And those guys that fly in those planes, they went down to Florida. They went to flight school. They lived next door. They had barbecue with their neighbors. They went out and partied. They had their wives fooled. Their wives didn't even know until they were on that airplane and they yelled Allah Akbar, and they took out almost 3,000 American lives. And we've got a short memory because we've got a southern border that's wide open, and we don't know how many people have already crossed in. They said in the last 2 weeks, they caught over 1,000 Chinese men, not families, but Chinese men coming into America. So this axis of evil, China, Russia, North Korea, we're seeing all of that build together. I wish we had another hour to go and take some of this apart, because I got a text a moment ago that there are volunteers moving from Jerusalem and Tel Aviv to take meals to the north, because the soldiers are already in combat from Hezbollah, and they put the hospitals in the north on high alert. And I really believe, while I was in Chicago, I heard a lady interviewed on the news, and ladies and gentlemen, listen to what she said. She said after October the 7th, she started crying. She said, "I am afraid, and I'm in America, and I'm afraid." And she said, "I was afraid to go to synagogue this weekend." And she said, "And I kept my children out of school all week because I was afraid." What's happening to our culture? What's happening to our country? And obviously, students of the Word of God, what's happening to the world that we're in as it prepares itself for the revelation of the Antichrist. We're getting ready to see a man step out and say, all these impossible geopolitical problems, I can fix them, but you've got to give me the power, you've got to give me the authority. And where do we go with that? That's another conversation, but that's a number, that's a name, and that is a mark, the mark of the beast. So all of that preparatory stuff is happening.
It's hard to imagine that we're here. It's hard to imagine that this is how fast it's happened. I mean, we're only 18 days into this, and our whole entire world has changed. Everything has changed. And I think it's a warning that you've been giving for a long time, that this is not the time for us to be complacent, to be callous, to be cold, or for us to put our nose in the sand. We have to be paying attention to the world around us. And if we believe our Bible,
Right.
then we believe that this this could be the last few chapters of our time here on earth.
Absolutely.
And, so we're looking for, obviously, we preach this, we teach this, we're looking for revival. I want God to send a breath from heaven, and that there would be a great harvest of souls before time ends. But if revival doesn't come, and if revival doesn't happen in the way that we think it'll happen, then I'm looking for rapture.
Yeah.
I want to get out of here.
And if you're going to go out in the rapture, you want to go out clean.
Exactly.
You want to go out without any spot on your garment, or any hatred or jealousy or hard feeling.
Or be
Life is so short.
Be backbiting the people you go to church with, who are fighting the same battles and same struggles that you are. Preachers fighting over territory and meetings and who's on what poster. We've got to stop with that foolishness. And we've got to love each other and do as much as we can for each other.
It's a wake-up for the church.
It is. Thank you for taking the time to do this. And we can be very honest and transparent in this moment. We're tired mentally and physically from the hours and hours these past few weeks. Last night was a special night.
It was.
That we will never forget. And the hundreds of
And they can go
thousands
on
of
online
dollars.
and see part of it on the archives.
Right. They can go to the archives, find A Night for Israel. You can find it at ralphsexton.com or in Trinity Baptist Church on our Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and be a part of that. But thank you for all that you do, and thank you for watching, for participating. No matter what platform you're watching this on, like it, share it. If you're watching on a platform where you can leave a comment, we'd love for you to comment where you're watching from. We appreciate you so very much and all that you do for the Lord as we pray together, study together, and we look for His imminent return. God bless you.